Although Astro Boy and Ape Man came out the same year, it's surprising that the latter is rarely discussed, especially considering the tremendous popularity of shonen action series. Ape Man deserves remembrance for being the earliest resemblance of popular modern action anime. Today's video is a beginner's guide to the franchise, primarily focusing on the 1963 series and the 1993 OVA, Man After. I understand if it's a little too vintage, but I recommend checking the video out to understand more about the history of the genres you enjoy. The story of Ape Man follows Detective Yokora, murdered by criminals and revived within an experimental cybernetic body. It's Professor Tani's 8th attempt at such a feat, hence the name. So, what does he do with this new lease on life? Well, he returns to work the next day, and I hope he asks for a raise. After choosing the new identity, Hachiro Azuma, things seem to be going well. It's like his New Game Plus version of life. Now, he's doing the same work as before, but with the speed of a train. He's also quite the ladies' man as he scores a girlfriend on his first day. Unfortunately, the flawed English localization obscured my understanding of its story, altering names, relationships, and who knows what else. Plus, it's incomplete. It's sad because when watching the unedited RAWs, I get the impression that it could still be enjoyable today. It's also the first series to feature long-term dynamic villains. Surprisingly, some developed eventually aiding Ape Man in battle, a trend that would later become a staple in long-running shonen anime. Its battles are also the earliest similarity to modern shonen anime for its depiction of speed. Characters bounce from one side of the city to the other within the blink of an eye, leaving destruction in their wake. There's also a bit of strategy involved, as Ape Man fights several clones and learns to attack the host instead of the phantoms. If I had to guess, Ape Man might have felt like the most mature anime for many years to come for its sole focus on action and adult characters. It's like a mix of superheroes, James Bond, and kaiju movies. Here, he's got a secret identity he uses to fight crime and occasionally rescue beautiful women. He utilizes his shape-shifting abilities to sneak into enemy bases and spring an attack, though it doesn't always work. As the story unfolds, threats become more severe, introducing giant robots and monsters who destroy both the city and its military. As futile as it might be, I try to see it from the perspective of 60s teens, but unfortunately, it's not what I consider conventionally enjoyable, even by my standards. It just didn't age well, and because of its poor English dub and the lack of interesting characters, the overall experience feels synonymous with every stereotype from the 1960s you probably have.
I am Dr. Spectra. I have come to expose you as Ape Man, Tobor.
Why don't you scram?
You close that great big mouth of yours, boy, or you'll get spanked. Do you hear me?
I'll take you apart, you Aye!
Oh, any human will get a shock by touching it. Touch it, Ape Man.
I am not Ape Man.
Well, why won't you touch it, Mr. Tobor?
Tobor, what's wrong?
Remember, I intend to take you prisoner. You will see me again.
Although its content may not be as enjoyable for its intended purposes today, a bad dub breathes some life into the anime for viewers intending to laugh with their friends, though not every episode is as funny. My favorite running gag was when the police chief signals for Ape Man. Instead of a bat signal, he calls Tobor's house, where his girlfriend answers the phone. However, the English version changes her name and status to Jenny the secretary, and it's funny for the possibly unintentional sexual tension. In the localization, Jenny doesn't know about Tobor's identity, so the chief pretends to be a wrong number, which is suspicious because who says this?
Tell Tobor this is a wrong number.
What do you mean wrong number? Who are you?
Wrong number, I said.
Naturally, she becomes suspicious and even a little jealous because of her secret feelings for Tobor, and when she finally confronts him, he's sarcastically indifferent.
I'm beginning to think that wrong number call is a secret signal between Tobor and some girl.
Maybe.
I think you're jealous, Jenny. Darn you, Skip.
I also thought it was funny how he's got a $1 trillion cybernetic body with flashlight eyeballs who can run fast enough to create tornadoes, but he can't light his own cigarettes. Yeah, smoking is a pretty big gimmick here, which got it taken off air in USA. In his belt buckle, he's got a stash of smokes that double as energy cartridges. It's like his version of going Super Saiyan. Anytime he's in trouble, just light one up and problem solved. The only problem is the lighting part. As a result, he improvises using a TNT fuse, electricity, or even a flamethrower.
I'll burn those chains off with this gun.
Don't bother burning the chains, miss. Just light my cigarette.
I initially thought the anime was a cigarette advertisement, but I guess its creators thought it looked cool. At least he's not smoking in every episode. Moving on to its visuals, I was occasionally surprised by how detailed its backgrounds were. I don't think they ever looked bad, but there were times it's downright beautiful, like these mountains that would make Bob Ross proud. While having great artwork is certainly a bonus, I love when it's inconsistent with good picture quality, as in these Japanese remasters. I just like reverse engineering animation, and 8-Man is not nearly fluid enough to hide its tricks. My favorite thing about the character designs was the shading and highlighting. I think they used chalk for some of the highlights, and some of the shaded scenes just look amazing. Unfortunately, you won't be able to appreciate this in English because it actually looks like this. Overall, if you're interested in animation history, laughing at corny dubs, or Super Sentai Metal Heroes, I recommend trying 8-Man. For everyone else, it's a safe pass. I give it a 6 out of 10. It's just unfortunate that the only English version was butchered, but that seems to be the fate of most 60s anime until licensed or fan-translated. Thankfully, its 90s successor was a tremendous improvement that will surprise many for featuring themes everyone loved in cyberpunk edgerunners, such as the addictive side of augmentations. It's called Man After, but I don't know which version it comes after. To the uninitiated, it feels like it spoils the original anime, but it doesn't. It's either the manga ending or a non-canon continuity, so just don't worry about it. Just treat it like a standalone anime, and you'll be fine. After all, my earlier segment provides enough subtext to understand its story. If you can ignore its implied continuity, it feels more like a gritty reboot than a faithful sequel. While the original was probably mature for its time, 8-Man After is in a different league. The previous 8-Man saved puppies and was cordial with his enemies. However, his predecessor is a hardened private detective battling PTSD with a thirst for vengeance. He's not exactly the type of guy suited for a billion-dollar body. Instead of fighting run-of-the-mill gangsters, giant mechs, and space monsters, the violence on the streets is directly connected to government corruption and black market augmentation rings filling the streets with chrome-plated drug addicts. The last major thematic difference is the combat. In the original, he tied his enemies up with their own guns, but now he brutally rips their augmentations out, leaving them bleeding out on the floor while he struggles to maintain his composure. Because its action is the main appeal for me, I won't say much, but one of my favorite kills was when he dragged a guy in front of an oncoming train, knowing he's fast enough to escape. That's not to say it's a total gore fest, it's just an incentive to motivate potential viewers to stick with it because of its slow start. The problem with tying it to the original 8-Man is that we're supposed to already care about the heroine and her troubled past, as she's Sachiko, aka Jenny from the original series. However, I didn't care for her or the first 8-Man. What made its story worthwhile was the subplot featuring a man hooked on serum after receiving too many augmentations. Our protagonist Hazama is in a similar boat, but struggles more with maintaining his composure as a living weapon with PTSD. Although its characters are much more complex than its predecessor, it takes itself too seriously for its borderline generic crime and corruption plot. I should also mention the beautiful storyboard work here, where some scenes feel like they were ripped straight out of a well-directed movie, and others are just something that can only be done in anime, like how they subtly characterized one of the main antagonists here by taking the vast cityscape and instantaneously scaling it down to the size of a model that he can manipulate in his hands, showing that he's pulling the strings for the entire city. Overall, I give 8 Man After a 7 out of 10. It's worth watching for fans of sci-fi, and it's one of those dark and gritty 90s OVA you probably missed. Plus, it looks great with a dramatic animation overhaul that actually makes 8 Man feel as formidable as he's supposed to be. There are other 8 Man entries such as the manga crossover with Cyborg 009 and the upcoming 8 Man Infinity manga, but I suspect neither will be translated. There's also a 1992 live-action movie with an English dub, but don't watch it, it's really boring. As for the recommended watch order, all you really need to see is 8 Man After, and I guess if you really enjoyed that, you can watch the original out of curiosity. Unfortunately for manga readers, the original manga is also untranslated and partially available online. Have you seen 8 Man? What are your thoughts? I noticed I'm getting more viewers in Japan recently, so I'd love to know some of your experiences and opinions on how well it was received in Japan. If you're wondering why I uploaded this before my Astro Boy video, it's because it's taking a lot longer than I expected and I don't want to rush it, but it should be available soon. Thanks to Nia-chan for 3rd tier support on Patreon, and also everyone else listed here for their Patreon support. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon with Astro Boy.